so much for joining us this morning. Let's stand and sing together. I am holding on to faith, 'cause I know you make a way. And I don't always understand, and I don't always get to see, but I will believe it, I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt that you were faithful then, and you'll be faithful now. You're forever faithful now. We trust you, Jesus. And I'm standing on your word. I'm calling heaven down to earth, and you will fight my enemies, and this will end in victory. And I will believe it, yes, I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt that you were faithful then, and you'll be faithful now. Oh, you were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. And I know you never fail. Yes, I know you never will. Yes, I know you never fail. Yes, I know you never will. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear, oh, I will preach to my doubt that you were faithful then, and you'll be faithful now. You make mountains move, and you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt that you were faithful then, and you'll be faithful now. Oh, you were faithful then, and you'll be faithful now.
Good morning. My name is Adrienne, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you're in the room with us, you can go and have a seat. Now, before we move into a time of giving together as a church family, I wanted to take a few minutes and update you about our team that's in Mexico. So I've been getting messages and pictures all week long of things that they've been doing and the way that God has been moving. And I wanted to share that with you guys because you guys have been partnering both financially and prayerfully in this mission trip. So Kelly gave me a couple updates even this morning. So this past weekend, they had a women's conference that looked a lot like IF. Ladies, if you came to IF a couple weekends ago, it looked a lot like that. And they had 140 women join them for that. And out of that conference, they saw 8 women give their lives to Christ, which is huge, absolutely big deal. They've also been able to purchase and give out 74 Bibles as they've made home trips and met people in the community where the church is operating out of. And they have been so excited to build relationships, to put Bibles in their hands in their own language, but also to give them those material goods that you guys helped provide for Kelly and Brandon to take over there. So thank you so much for allowing them to be the hands and feet of Jesus where they are. We actually have a picture. This is the church that they've been meeting in. This is the church that they're going to meet in actually today, right now, as we're having services, so are they. They've been working all week and all weekend to make sure that they have Sunday services, that they can open their doors and welcome the people of Orizaba and show them the love of Christ. So as we give today, I want to remind you that this is part of what you give to. It's not just the ministries here in Crossway. It's not just the partners that we have here in Vicksburg. It also goes to support our international partners as we help provide resources for this church as they grow and as they minister in their own communities. So if you feel led to give today, we have several ways that you can do that. If you're here in the room with us, we'll have volunteers come by and you can place your gift with them. We also, if you're joining us online or if you prefer, you can go to crosswaychurch.com/give, or you can text a dollar amount to 84321. Let's pray over our gifts and over our team in Mexico today. God, we just thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to come here and worship you together. God, we thank you so much for how you generously provide for us. And God, we ask that as we give a portion back to you of what already belongs to you, God, that you would take it and you would multiply it and you would use it to further your kingdom. God, we pray especially over our team in Orizaba. God, we pray over that church and the service that they're having. God, we ask that you would invade that space, that you would soften hearts, that you would change lives, because you do, just like we just sang, you change everything. God, we thank you for your faithfulness and your goodness. God, we offer this time of teaching to you now. God, that you would soften our hearts and open our ears to hear your truth, and that TJ would be speaking your words. God, we thank you so much for your son, Jesus. We love you, we praise you, and we adore you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see you here today. We are in the 5th week of a sermon series that we've been doing entitled Forgotten Virtues. And in case you haven't been here or in case this is your first time with us, here's what we're doing in the sermon series. We are talking about some virtues that have become pretty much forgotten in our country today. I think there was probably a time in our country's past when these virtues were more commonly thought about, they were commonly practiced. There were more people probably who oriented their lives around these virtues, but somewhere along the line we've drifted off course and we've gotten to the place where as a country they're pretty much forgotten. Very few people think about these, and even fewer people, I believe, actually practice these virtues. And the reason why we're spending 5 weeks to talk about it is because I think we're actually worse off because of it. I think we're worse off in almost every area of our lives. We're worse off as a country, we're worse off as businesses, we're worse off as families, we're worse off as churches, and we're actually, I think, worse off as individuals. And so we're just talking about these virtues because I think we need to do some work to recover them. They need to go from forgotten virtues to virtues that we live and we kind of guide our lives by. So far in the sermon series, we've talked about 4 different virtues. We've talked about honor. We've talked about purity, which was kind of a tough week for some people. We talked about loyalty. We talked about gratitude. And this week, I want to finish off the series by talking about the forgotten virtue of integrity. And as we start talking about integrity this morning, I want to share with you a story that I think illustrates why this is such an important thing for us to talk about this morning. So a few weeks ago, I was sitting in the gym after a workout when one of my friends that I made while I'd been working out in the gym came over and sat down, and he started talking to me, and he shared with me a story about something that had happened in his life a couple weeks prior. He told me that about how one day he went to the gym and he was working out on one of the cardio machines, and he had to leave suddenly. Something happened, something came up, and he had to leave quickly, and so he gathered together his things and he took off and went and dealt with the situation. Now, what he didn't realize at the time was that he had left a very expensive pair of headphones and another item that was also pretty valuable sitting there on the cardio machine. He didn't realize they were missing until later that night, and he started looking everywhere. He turned his house upside down, looked at every place 2 and 3 times, couldn't find it. Went to his cars, did the same thing. Went to his place of employment, did the same thing. And about 3 days later, the thought occurred to him, well, maybe I should try the gym. Maybe I left him there. And so he went to the gym, went to the lost and found, and of course didn't find it there. And just on a whim, he thought to himself, well, maybe I should go check that machine. Now he thought, man, it surely isn't there, but what harm can it do to go check? And so he went over to that machine, and sure enough, his headphones and that other item were still sitting there 3 days later. And so he's sitting there telling me this story, and he's like, man, I just can't believe it. I just thought for sure somebody would take it. Man, I can't believe there are still people in this world who do the right thing. Like, I can't believe there are still people who see stuff like that sitting there and think to themselves, that's not mine, I shouldn't take it. And they just leave it alone. And as he's sitting there telling me that story, I remember thinking, man, I can't believe it either. I just can't believe that those things were still sitting there. Isn't it crazy that we live in a world where we are more shocked when somebody acts with integrity than when they don't? Isn't that crazy? Isn't it crazy that we live in a world where we are more surprised when somebody does the right thing than when they do the wrong thing? And you can't help but wonder, why is that true? Why is it true that we're shocked when we actually see people who live their lives with integrity? And I think the answer to that question is because so few people actually do. It's not unusual in our world to have an athlete, someone that we think is a really great guy, a really great gal. We look at them and we think, man, they're wholesome and they seem to have values and they're a role model. I don't know if they know it or not, but they're a role model, and I'm glad that they're there. And I hope kids and other people are watching their life just to turn on the news one day or get on social media and find out that that person wasn't exactly what we thought that they were. Or a politician. Someone who claims to believe something and be for something and hold certain positions and have certain values and morals. And we look at them maybe sometimes and think, man, they might just be the real deal. Just to turn on the news or get on social media and find out that they're not exactly what we thought that they were. They're not exactly what they claimed that they were. Or in our world, unfortunately, sometimes it's a pastor or an evangelist or a missionary of some sort. Someone who's their lives supposed to be guided by certain things, they're supposed to believe certain things are true and live by those things, just to find out on the news that they weren't exactly what they thought that they were. And the truth of the matter is most of us don't need a story about a pastor or a politician or an athlete. Most of us know somebody much closer to home, don't we? For some of us, it was a friend, someone we loved, somebody we cared about, someone we spent a whole lot of time with, and we thought we knew them well, and we thought certain things were true about them, just to find out somehow that we were wrong. You know, we live in a world that is just absolutely saturated by a lack of integrity. And that's why I want to talk about this morning. And before we get going too far into the conversation, I think it's important that we just define integrity. Like, what exactly is integrity? There are two guys who have, I think, a really great definition. They've come up with a really great definition for integrity. It's a slightly different way of saying the same thing, two guys that I respect. But the first one is this. Andy Stanley says that integrity is doing the right thing even if it costs you, which I think is a pretty good definition, don't you? Craig Rochelle says the same thing slightly differently. He says, integrity is when your behavior matches your beliefs. So for those of us who are Christians, we believe that lying is wrong. So integrity is when our behavior matches our beliefs. As Christians, those of us in the room who are Christians, we believe that God teaches that gossip is wrong, no matter the context, no matter the reason. And it's when our behavior matches our beliefs. Integrity, as Christians, we believe that God teaches that it's right and proper to be faithful to our spouse. So integrity is when our behavior and our beliefs line up. And regardless of which definition you would prefer, the reality is that this stuff is in pretty short supply in our world, isn't it? So this morning, in the few minutes that I have with you, I'd like to just remind you of some benefits of living your life with integrity. To be clear, it's not an exhaustive list, and probably some of you, I'm going to tell you stuff you already know, but because integrity is in such short supply, I feel like it's important just to remind you potentially of stuff that you're already aware of. But 4 quick benefits of living your life with integrity. The first one is this: you can walk closely with God. In Psalm chapter 51, the writer of this psalm, David, he starts off in verse 1 by asking, I think, some really interesting questions. In verse 1, here's what he says. He says, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? Now that may seem like some rather strangely worded questions, but really what David's saying to God is he's saying, God, who's the person who can experience your presence in their life? God, who's the person who can experience communion with you? Who's the person who can experience close fellowship with you? Now, in the next 4 verses, God goes on to answer David's question. And he doesn't exactly say the word integrity. Instead, what God chooses to do is he chooses to list out things that a person does who lives their lives with integrity. But underneath all of that, God's answer is someone who lives their life with integrity. Now, here's the way that God said it. The one, he's answering David's question, the one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like integrity to me. God continues in the next verse. He says, whose tongue utters no slander. Well, that's integrity, isn't it? Who does no wrong to a neighbor and casts no slur on others. Also sounds like integrity, doesn't it? God continues, who despises a vile person, but honors those who fear the Lord. Integrity. And then this next thing that God says is really interesting to me. He says, who keeps an oath or a promise or their word, even when it hurts, and does not change their mind. Now that sounds a lot like Andy's definition, doesn't it? Someone who does the right thing, even if it costs you. That's integrity. God continues, who lends money to the poor without interest. Integrity. Who does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Integrity. So God's answer to David is rather simple. If you want to experience a close relationship with God, you need to be a person who lives your life with integrity. A person whose behavior and beliefs match up. A person who decides they're going to do the right thing even if it costs them. Maybe a better way or another way to understand what God's trying to say here is to think about this whole thing within the context of family life and family values. My wife Stacy and I have certain values that are important to us, that we're trying to pass on to our children. For instance, some of them, I won't give you all of them, but we just kind of say around our house, Tennysons don't lie. Tennysons work hard. Tennysons love God. And Tennysons treat other people with respect. And we honor and respect authority. Those are just a few of them. But they're important to my wife and I. And so we do everything we can. We take every opportunity to pass these values down to our kids. Now, our kids get to decide what they're going to do with them. Whether they're going to adopt the values and live by them, or they're going to reject the values and live differently. But here's what I've noticed. When our kids take those values and they allow those values to guide their life, what happens is we experience a closeness with them. And of course, they don't have to do that. If they decide to live their life differently, they decide to reject the values, we're going to still love them. We're going to still take care of them and provide for them and try our best to guide them. But it does damage that sense of closeness. And it works that way with God too. When we take his values and that he passes down to us and we live our lives with integrity, what happens is we get to experience closeness with him. And this thing alone right now explains why there are some of you here, you feel a distance between you and God and you can't figure out why. For some of you, it might be because in some area of your life, you're not living with integrity. And it's damaging your closeness with God. If you think you can live your life without integrity and still be close to God, you are kidding yourself. So that's the first benefit. The second benefit is you have a built-in guide. I love the way the writer of Proverbs says this. Here's what he says. He says, the integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful, or those who live their life with a lack of integrity, are destroyed by their duplicity. But the part I don't want you to miss is the first part. The integrity of the upright guides them. What the writer is saying is he's saying, listen, if you'll decide to live your life in a way that your beliefs match, or your behaviors and your beliefs line up, that they match, if you'll decide to do the right thing, that when you live your life with integrity, it has a way of taking all of the gray and the uncertainty of life and bringing a clarity to it. If you'll decide to do the right thing, even if it costs you, then what happens is as you're trying to figure out and make decisions, it makes the way forward clear. Now, it doesn't always make the way forward easy, but it makes the way forward clear. It can take all of that gray and bring it to a place where you're clear. This is black and this is white. This is wrong and this is right. I had a situation this past week where I was trying to figure out something. What was the right thing to do? And all week long, the question and the problem nagged at me. But I came back to this verse, and I asked myself, what would it look like if my behaviors matched my beliefs? And what would it look like if I did the right thing, even if it cost me? And I'm telling you, it brought incredible clarity to my life. Some of you are trying to figure out a difficult problem. And maybe it feels complex and hazy, and it's hard to discern what should I do. And you're dying for someone to bring you clarity. But if you'll live your life with integrity, if you'll decide you're not going to compromise here, you'll discover the way forward becomes really easy to figure out. or at least a lot easier. So that's the second benefit. The third benefit is that you have constant peace in your heart. I want to go back for a moment to Psalms chapter 15. David writes God and asks these two questions. God, how do I experience closeness with you? And then God over and over and over basically tells David, integrity, 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 integrity. Well, on the tail end of that, God says something that I think is rather interesting. Here's what he says in verse 5. He says, at the very end, after he said all that, whoever does these things will never be shaken. Another way of saying what God is saying here is whoever does these things, whoever lives his life with integrity, they'll experience peace. You know, when you and I live our lives with a lack of integrity, what we tend to do is we tend to walk around worried about, what if we get caught? What if somebody finds out? What if they know? If you live your life with lack of integrity, chances are you lay your head on the pillow at night and you think to yourself thoughts like this: what if my boss finds out what I've done? Will I get fired? Will I lose my job? What is he going to say? What is he going to do? What if my wife finds out that I've been flirting with another girl at the office? What is she going to do? What is she going to say? When you live your life with a lack of integrity, you lay on the pillow, your head on the pillow at night, and you ask yourself questions like, what if they find out? What if they know? What if I'm discovered? And that happens to people all the time because they've chosen a lack of integrity. Now, the flip side of that coin is this, is I've never met a person who lives their life with integrity that lays their head on the pillow at night and thinks, gosh, I hope nobody finds out I did the right thing. People don't do that. People don't lay their head on the pillow at night who live their life with integrity and go, man, I hope they find out I told them the truth. Hope they don't find out. If you live your life with integrity, you do the right thing, even if it costs you, your behaviors and beliefs match up. You don't lay your head on the pillow at night and think, man, I really hope my boss doesn't find out that I did that the way he wanted me to, the right way. You don't lay your head on the pillow if you live your life with integrity and think, man, I hope my wife doesn't find out about what I did with that other girl. Nobody thinks, hey, you know what? I got to worry about these people. They found out I did the right thing. You see, you have peace. When you live your life with integrity, you have peace. You don't sit up and worry and wonder, what if I get caught? What if they find out? There's a fourth benefit. And the fourth benefit is this: you gain trust, respect, honor, and influence. In the Old Testament, there's a book called Daniel. Daniel is, at least for the first 6 chapters or so, it's actually the story of a guy named Daniel and his 3 friends. But before we're even introduced to Daniel, we're actually introduced to a character in the story named Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is the king of the Babylonian Empire, and he is leading his army, and they are on the move. They're conquering and taking ground, and he had this practice where when he would go conquer an area, he would go find the best and the brightest, the smartest ones, and he would take them and he would bring them back to Babylon with him. And when he brought those people back to Babylon with him, they weren't treated like slaves. They were actually treated really, really well. They lived in the king's home, they ate the best food, they wore the best clothes, and they hung out with the king a lot. And what would happen is when the king ran into a problem, an issue or something that he couldn't figure out, he would sit down with these guys and he would ask them, hey, look, what should I do? What do you think? And they would advise him and help him figure the whole thing out. Well, Daniel and his 3 friends were in Jerusalem when Nebuchadnezzar captured it, and Nebuchadnezzar's team decided these guys are some of the best and the brightest. And Daniel and his friends were brought back to Babylon. And as soon as they get to Babylon, Daniel has a decision to make. And his decision is he going to eat the king's meat and drink the king's wine? And the reason why this is a point of decision for Daniel is because Daniel knows that it's highly likely that this food and drink has already been offered to idols. And if that's true, then that would have been wrong for Daniel to do. God had already been somewhat clear about this. And so Daniel he finds himself at a crossroads, where he has to make a decision. Is he going to compromise his integrity, and probably nobody would know, or even say anything about it, or even blame him? But he has to decide, is he going to compromise his integrity, or is he going to do the right thing even if it costs him? And make no mistake about it, if Daniel doesn't eat the king's meat, this could really cost him. The king could be upset and have him killed on the spot. And Daniel's probably a teenager at this point in his life, so this is kind of a heavy decision to make. But he's at a crossroads. Is he going to compromise his integrity, or is he going to make sure that his beliefs and his behavior match up? And in verse 8, we discover what Daniel does. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. So Daniel decides he's not going to compromise his integrity, that he's going to do the right thing even if it costs him. And so he asks the guy, he says, look, I really can't do this. Now, in the next verse, we read about what happens after that. In the next verse, we read, now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. So Daniel decides he's not going to compromise his integrity. And on the heels of that, in response, God shows Daniel favor. Now, for those of us who've read Daniel, we know how the story goes, right? Daniel goes on and God protects him and shows him favor. He gains influence with the king and all this kind of stuff. And by the time the story of Daniel is over, Daniel has lived a long life. He's outlived quite a few different kings, and he becomes incredibly respected, wildly honored, and unbelievably influential. But it all happened when he was a teenager, where he had to decide, am I going to compromise my integrity or not? Am I going to do the right thing even if it costs me? And there were several other points in his life where he had to make the same decision. That wasn't a one-and-done decision. But what I want you to notice is that it was his choice to be a man of integrity that led to honor and respect and influence. I think oftentimes there are people who want honor and respect and influence without being a person of integrity. And I just don't think it works that way for most people. So listen, if you want to be a good dad, a dad who's respected, a dad who's honored, a dad who has influence with his family, be a man of integrity. If you want to be a well-respected business leader in the community, be a man of your word or a woman of your word. Do the right thing, even if it costs you. Let your behavior and your belief match up. And I think if you'll do that, what you'll discover is over time, people will notice. And they'll respect you. And they'll show you honor. And they'll give you influence. And they'll seek your advice and your wisdom. But you have to make the choice to be a person of integrity. So let me ask you guys a question I want to invite you to think deeply about for just a few minutes. The question is this: what is your integrity worth? Take a moment and think about it. Now, when I ask this question, let me be clear about what I'm asking. I'm not asking you, what do you think your integrity is worth? Because most of us would probably say, well, I think my integrity is worth a lot. I'm also not asking you, what do you feel like your integrity is worth? Because most of us would probably say, I feel like I feel pretty good about it. When I ask this question, what I'm asking you is, what do your actions say about what your integrity is worth to you? What is your life and the way that you live it? What does that say about what your integrity is worth to you? For some of you, maybe you've lied on a resume or in a job interview. And maybe you did it for who knows what reason. Perhaps there was something about that job that you just wanted. Maybe you hated your current job and you wanted to escape it, or maybe the job offered you better pay or better benefits, or maybe it was an arena you wanted to get in, but you lied in order to get the job. If you've done that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. Maybe for some of you, your integrity is actually worth a little bit less than that. Maybe you've embezzled something from the company you work for. You took something that just didn't belong to you. Maybe it was a pen. Maybe it was a tool. Maybe it was just a ream of paper that you took home and you used it at your computer at home. And you justified it. You said, well, I mean, they won't care. Nobody will notice. This company is so wealthy, blah, 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 blah. But if you've ever done that, what I want you to know is that's what your integrity is worth to you. Or maybe you took something that was a personal expense and you claimed it as a business expense. Something that you really was more for you, but you saw an opportunity and there's a little gray area there. And so you're like, nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to care. And so you filed it as a business expense. If you've ever done that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. Or maybe you're in business and you have a business and you have some clients that make more money than others. They're wealthier. And so instead of billing them at the same level you would everybody else, you bill them a little bit higher. And you think to yourself, they can afford it. And even though you may be right, if you've ever done that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. Or maybe at work, you cut corners. You know the right way to do it. You know the way that they want you to do it. But you cut corners. And again, you probably think to yourself something like, well, nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to care. Or, you think, well, I'm just super busy and slammed right now. I got to get a bunch done. And you're stressed out or whatever it is. But if you've ever done that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. Or maybe you told a story to some of your friends and you just exaggerated the story in order to be liked. If you've ever done that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. Or maybe you go home and you tell your spouse, man, I love you. You're the only one for me. I'm just, I only have eyes for you. But when you go to work, there's that person you flirt with, and you justify it. You're like, everybody has a work wife. Everybody has a work husband. It's not that big a deal. But the reality is that's not exactly faithfulness to your spouse, is it? And if you've ever done that or if you do that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. Or maybe you're a student and you got to get good grades because you want to get into the school so that you can get into the career that you want. And things get hectic one day and you get in a bind, and so you cheat. Cheat on the test, cheat on the paper. And if you've ever done that, that's what your integrity is worth to you. So let me ask you a question and give it some serious thought. What do your actions say about what your integrity is worth to you? In the Old Testament, there's this guy by the name of Job, who if you were to sit down with him and ask him that question, Job would say, my integrity is worth everything to me. It's worth my life. I don't know if you're familiar with his story, so let me give you a quick recap. Job loved God. He was a man of unbelievable integrity. He was everything you could hope for in a dad, everything you could hope for in a husband. He was everything you could hope for in a leader in his community. And because he was a man of integrity, and he taught his kids to be the same way, and he honored God, and he did the right thing even if it cost him, he was well respected, and he was well honored, and he was a man of tremendous influence because of it. Well, one day Satan talks to God and tells God, hey, listen, your boy Job, the only reason why he's a man of integrity is because life is easy and good for him. If you let me start taking some of that stuff away, you'll discover that he's not exactly what you think he is. He's not really a man of integrity. So God gives Satan permission to start taking things away from Job. And Satan, short story here, kind of summarizing it, Satan goes in and absolutely decimates Job's life. Takes everything. Takes his family, takes his wealth, takes his job, takes his future hopes and dreams, even takes his health. And when Job is at the lowest point that a person could possibly be, Job's wife and Job's friends start to gang up on him. His wife tells him, look, why are you still maintaining your integrity? Just curse God and die. I mean, come on, man. Like nobody in your situation would maintain their integrity. Just give it up. His friends came along and started accusing him. Look, you claim to be a man of integrity. You claim to be the guy who does things, and you want people to believe that, but it is nothing more than a charade. And the sooner you quit pretending that you're a man of integrity and own up to it, the better off everything will be. And I love Job's response. Here's what Job says. He says, I will not destroy my integrity. I don't care how bad things get. I won't do it. I'm going to do the right thing, even if it costs me. I will maintain my innocence and never let go of it. There's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can do. I don't care what people think. I don't care what people say. I'm going to do it. My behaviors and my beliefs are going to match up. My conscience will not reproach me as long as I live. Job would say, listen, my integrity is worth everything. So let me circle back to you again. What about you? What is your integrity worth? When you do an inventory of your life, what's it really worth? It really is a tragedy that we live in a world where we are shocked when we encounter integrity. It absolutely is a tragedy. But it doesn't have to be that way. God's people can decide that anytime somebody encounters us, we're going to be different. That we're going to do the right thing, even if it costs us. That the stuff we say that we believe and what we actually do, it matches. And we can change this. Now listen, maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, TJ, man, when I started thinking about what my integrity is really worth, there's some areas and there's some things. And maybe you're wondering, man, look, is it too late, or have I really ruined this thing? Well, if you find yourself in a place where you feel like, man, I've lacked integrity, I want you to know it's not too late. Make it right with God. Make it right with whoever you need to make it right with. And just determine from here on out that you're not going to compromise your integrity. That like Job, it's going to be everything to you. And I think if we'll do that, I think we'll find that our city feels a lot different, don't you? The interesting thing about integrity that we sometimes forget is that it's the thing we want for out of everybody else. Like it's what we want in the guy our daughter's going to marry. It's what we want in the guy or the gal our son might marry. It's what we want our spouse to do. It's what we want our neighbor to do. It's what we want our boss to do. It's what we want out of everybody else. It's time for us to rise up and be the thing that we long for in everybody else. Nobody complains about the neighbor who's a man of integrity or a woman of integrity. We all want to live next to him, don't we? Let's be that guy. Let's be that gal. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for the reminder of how important integrity is. God, we really do live in a world where it's shocking when we encounter it, but it really shouldn't be that way. So God, I pray that you'd help us to be men and women of integrity, people who decide we're going to do the right thing no matter what, people who decide that our beliefs and our actions are going to line up, that they're going to match. God, please forgive us for those times and those places where we have lacked the integrity that we needed, where we've compromised somewhere along the line. God, I pray that you would forgive us for those, and you would help us to do better. And God, I didn't mention it earlier, but I think the biggest reason for those of us who are Christians why we should do this is because when your people act with integrity, it brings honor and glory to you. So God, I pray that as we do this, that you would truly be honored and glorified, your name would be lifted up and celebrated, and that you would ultimately be honored as a result. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Let's all end this morning together by standing and singing out again. for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Sing that out, church. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. See the miracle that I just can't get over. My name is registered in heaven. Oh, my praise belongs to you forever. Yeah, this is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son, and Father. Our God will finish what He started. Yeah, our God will finish what He started. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Yeah. If I'm not dead and you're not done, greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead and you're not done, greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead and you're not done, greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead and you're not done, greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. My testimony. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony, and I'm alive. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Yeah.
Well, church, thanks so much for joining us this morning. I wanted to remind you before you head out, next week is Family Fun Day. So we will have one service at 10:30, and then we'll have lunch together, and we've got a ton of fun stuff planned for outside. So make sure you make it a point to be here next week at 10:30. Hey, if you have any questions or if you'd like to make a spiritual decision, TJ's going to be in the back and he'd love to chat with you. Guys, we hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time.